Today we're at Windrock. We're going to take a look at ReachAround, which is marked blue, and riding this definitely gives you a taste of what the difference in Windrock Trail ratings are versus some other parks. Because for a blue, this is definitely a handful for me. I feel like this trail has a lot of similarities to Cave Boy. You can check that video out in the playlist with this one for Windrock. At least the berms up top, which we'll get to in just a bit here, are cut similar. They're nice and steep, chunky, that kind of thing. And technically, this trail should be easier than Cave Boy to Snake Rock, because this is marked blue and Snake Rock is red. But to me, it's just a different kind of pinch you get in a couple of spots. So it really kind of depends on what makes you particularly nervous when you're riding more aggressive stuff. But I have heard the debate often. The better riders will almost always say that ReachAround is easier than Cave Boy to Snake Rock. Here we're a good ways down the trail, and for a little perspective on what these berms are like, when I get this shot, the bike is probably a good 8 feet above my head, and it's probably only 12 feet away from me. So these berms kind of come in steep and tight. And then it probably won't show a great perspective, but at least give this a try. You can see we're dipping another one, and then another one, and then it kind of rolls out down by those rocks. So this is a fun little section, really steep though, and these berms are tight. So you'll have to ride them both and decide for yourself. So pretty chunky in various spots like you saw there. And then you'll start seeing these berms, which are very similar to the ones over on Cave Boy. So far, nothing really super gnarly in here. Here's that little bit with the 3 rock drops in a row. Kind of get a little perspective. They go by pretty fast. So first one's actually the biggest. This one is pretty short, and that last one down there is only a couple feet. It's just a rhythm thing for me. If I get this first one landed in the right place, you can just hit these 3 in a row, and it's pretty cool, but definitely steep and rough. This bit coming up after this berm is probably the gnarliest length of trail, and I just ride it really slow so I can kind of pick my way through. And if you do it like that, it's really not too bad. Here we are at the long rocky chute. I'll take this from a couple points along the trail. If I get too far back, you won't be able to see the rocks, but you can see that is pretty steep there. Definitely some gnarly rocks and stuff. And then a little sweep and down into the bottom before you pop out. And I'll go down here and take a picture looking back, and it gives I think a pretty good perspective on what this section is like. And now we finally get the big picture. I'm at the other side of that little dip at the bottom, That is a long stretch of trail, and steep and gnarly. But as you saw in the POV, if you're able to ride it slow, you can pretty easily pick your way through most of that, as long as you kind of know in your head where you want to be for the rocks and stuff. And we got a couple more turns before we need to take a trail split. And technically you can just hang a right at the bottom of this incline, but it's just so steep that I never try it that hard right there. So call me uncourageous if you want, but I just don't like quite that sharp and steep return. Besides, I use so much brake on this trail that I really need the rest for my hands at that point. And then coming up here, got another pretty techy little bit, depending on what you're used to riding. Aside from that long rocky chute that we just looked at, this section is the next most difficult bit on this trail. Really got to know where you want to be when you come through this. Pretty wise to walk this before trying it the first time. There are a couple lines here. Enduro racers were actually jumping off that during the last race they had here. It's pretty wild to see. Get a shot of this grade if I can. Let's see what we're dealing with here. Definitely a scary bit of trail for me. And there have been times in the last year where that bit was unrideable for me personally. But right now, there is a path that I can pick through. And here's where we come back to the end of the Cave Boy Snake Rock run. This is the bit where ReachAround basically finishes and joins up with some other trails. I'm going to get a shot of this grade. See if I can get some more realistic perspective from up here. Really steep bit of track. It just falls off so fast. But when it's dry, it's quite a bit of fun to run this. But when it's wet, I just avoid this section of the mountain. Run. And from here out, it's the same as the other video. And again, just going slow, pick my way down this carefully. And then we're out. And here the trail just sneaks up behind the end of Dropout, if you take the full Dropout line. And they merge right at this corner, and then you jump into the same exit trail for all the trails on this area of the mountain. And there it is, ReachAround.